A change is underway. The history of Agile takes shape. Frustrated by the status quo, several software development teams began to change their approach to planning and delivering new products throughout the 1990s. Well, during this time, we saw the introduction of so many different development methods like Scrum, Rapid Application Development, Extreme Programming, DSW, DSDM, Feature-Driven Development, and Programmatic Programming. While these methods vary, the common thread among all of them is a lighter weight model that allows for more flexibility and less overhead planning. These approaches to software development are the earliest methods in the history of Agile that ultimately led to what we know today. Finally, in the early 2000s, the history of Agile and the future of development changed forever. No joke. The future of development completely changed with the introduction of Agile. It all started in the spring of 2000 when a group of 17 software developers, including Martin Fowler and Jim Highsmith, John Kern, and the rest of the 17 other developers, they all met in the state of Oregon to discuss how they could speed up the development times in order to bring new software to market faster. They recognized two key opportunities that achieving this goal would make possible. First, we need to shorten the delay of delivering the software to users in order to avoid the market fit problem and also the development graveyard issues that we discussed earlier. And number two, getting feedback from the users as quickly as possible, just so that we can confirm the usefulness of the new software and then only continue to improve on accordingly. While this meeting did not result in the Agile methodology that we know today, it was a critical milestone in the history of Agile, as speed to market, rapid feedback, and continuous improvement are the hallmarks of Agile methodology. But do not misunderstand that we are talking about some type of different SDLC. No, it's the same SDLC, and there's actually only one SDLC, software development lifecycle. First, it starts with the planning, designing, coding, testing, and deployment. But if you remember, the waterfall model of doing the SDLC is pretty bad. That's why we need to follow an agile way of doing the same SDLC. So I actually realized that some students mistook the difference between SDLC and Agile. Agile is a methodology that does the SDLC. Waterfall is also another methodology that does the SDLC. So we are all talking about the best approach to work within an SDLC process. So the Agile methodology is a way to manage a project by breaking it up into several phases. It involves constant collaboration with stakeholders and continuous improvement at every single stage. Once the work begins, teams cycle through a process of planning, executing, and evaluating. So it's no longer like waterfall, which was you have to start with planning, which takes a long time to plan and all the designs. Then you start coding. The moment you jump into the coding stage, you can no longer go back to planning. After coding, you need to test. And while you are testing, of course, there are going to be some problems that the developers need to fix. But we cannot go back to the design phase to redesign a piece of software because that's not how waterfall works. You need to plan very well, you need to design very well, and then you need to code. But in reality, you cannot design or plan 100% perfect. Things change. That's why we are talking about Agile. So the way Agile works is through multiple cycles. So each cycle itself is SDLC. Each cycle takes about 2 weeks or 4 weeks. Well, how long each cycle should take, it completely depends on the product and the other reasons that the team needs to discuss. But on average, most of the time, I would say probably 80% of the time, each cycle takes about 2 weeks. Now, listen very carefully. This is very crucial because the magic that Agile brings is the cycle itself. So what is a cycle? Cycle is a short period of time that goes through a process of planning, designing, executing, in other words, implementing or coding. They all mean the same. Then testing and deploying. All right, let me go over it one more time. It's a process. It's a short period of time that goes through a process of planning, designing, coding, testing, and deployment. Does it ring the bell? Does it sound familiar to you? Well, it should, because it is the SDLC process itself. So the way Agile constructed its approach is, how about instead of creating the whole SDLC process for 10, 15 years, which is insane, how about we go through a cycle of repeating the same steps? For example, we can define 2 weeks of cycle. So within these 2 weeks, we plan what we're trying to build. We're not talking about the whole entire software, we're talking about or a particular component in the software. So we have a cycle of 2 weeks. In other words, we call it sprint. To make it easier for you to understand, I called it cycle. The correct term we should be using is sprint. That's what Agile calls it. Sprint is a cycle of 2 weeks. Cool. Now, what do we do? What's the benefit of having a sprint or having a cycle of executing the same SDLC process? So basically, we're doing SDLC every 2 weeks. Well, that gives continuous collaboration between both the team members and the project stakeholders, those people who are investing, putting their money into this project. Now, we need to talk about the values of Agile. So there are 4 values that Agile brings to us. These 4 values are very important to remember. And this is the foundation of an Agile methodology. Number 1, it's about the individuals and interactions over processes and tools. We don't want to waste time, months or years, discussing the processes and all the tools. Instead, we need the personal interaction. We need the actual interactions between the developers and the business owners and the stakeholders and the project managers. We want this atmosphere. Okay, the next is working software over comprehensive documentation. Instead of writing so many documentation, so many planning, we need to jump right into actual design and development so that we can fastly create something and present to the stakeholders for their approval or disapproval, just so that we can get their feedback. The third value of Agile is customer collaboration over contract negotiation. What do we mean by this? Well, instead of talking about contracts, all the documentation, all the other nonsense with the client and wasting all this time, how about we collaborate? We're going to have this fast sprint cycles. Then immediately, let's have a demo session. Let's have a meeting so that we could show you what we have created. Let's collaborate so that we can have a periodic feedback from our client. Well, what's the benefit of having your client involved in your process? It's actually crucial if you think about the dress analogy that I gave you when we discussed the waterfall methodology. So disasters happen when we don't have our clients involved in our development process. If our client is always involved in us so that we can give them the presentations, they can check out what features, what components we have created within a particular sprint. And this also gives an opportunity to our clients whether or not they want to change their design or their requirements, because we need to develop, we need to create things based on what the market needs, based on what the people need. So the business team, they're good at what the market needs. Therefore, when we are going through these sprints, these cycles, the market changes, things change. So it's important that we need our clients always involved in us. So it's important that we need to have our clients always involved in our development process so that they can tell us if this is what they want. Number 4, responding to change over following a plan. Yes, we do have to follow the plan, but it's not like we're going to plan out 5 to 6 years of work, then implementing it. Instead, while we are collaborating with the customer, while we are taking all this feedback from the customer, we need to respond to change. We need to react to all these different business requirements and change our plan and change our design if needed, so that we're not going to end up creating a software that the business or the market no longer needs, or by the time it's done and ready to launch, it will not be an out-of-date product. That's why responding to change is very important. So Agile, even if you Google the meaning of this word, Agile means flexible, adaptable. We need to be adaptable. The development team needs to be adaptable, responding to any change from the business. All right, this is the overview of Agile and all the benefits, all the advantages, and all the problems that Agile solves. Now you understand why and how Agile came about, and what problems it solves. In the next coming lessons, we'll be discussing Scrum. Scrum is a very popular framework in Agile environment that almost 99% of companies out there use in their dev teams. Well, take a break and get ready for the next lesson.